Now, the question often comes with all of us, if we want to reach our goals, how do you go about it? Do you share your goals with other people? That possibly is the most often asked question of all to me. How and who do you share your goals with? And the rule is basically fairly simple. If it's a give-up goal, you share it with everybody. If it's a go-up goal, you share it only with those people whom you love and trust and whom you know are going to be supportive of you. Now, for example, a give-up goal, if I'm going to give up eating too much or drinking too much, if I'm going to give up smoking, if I'm going to give up cussing, if I'm going to give up being mean and nasty and ornery, any of the give-up goals like that, I want to share it with other people because others are supportive and they will encourage you in that. But for example, if you're a salesperson and your goal is to be the #1 sales lady in the organization or the #1 salesman in the organization, and you go to another one of the sales ladies and say, hey, I'm going to be #1 sales lady in this whole organization this whole year. And that lady's objective was to do the same thing. Do you think she's going to say to you, yeah, you can sure do it, when all the time she's wanting to do it? But if you go home and tell your husband or your wife, yes, indeed, I'm going to be #1 this year, you'll get the encouragement and the support there, which is so extremely important. Yes, you really have to have that understanding of goals. If they're give-up goals, share them with everybody. If they're go-up goals, share them only with the people whom you know will give you the support. Want to reach your goals? You got to make a commitment. Now, one of the basic problems in life is so many people do not make commitments. When I was losing that weight, one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life was continue to deny myself the food which I so dearly love, especially the sweets. And it was really tough to get involved in all of that jogging. But I had made a commitment, and because the commitment was made, I really decided I was going to stay with it. I had another commitment. When I wrote the book, one of the first things I put in there was that I weighed 165 pounds and that I had a 34-inch waistline. I had it typeset. Now, at the time I put that in there, I weighed 202 pounds and had a 41-inch waistline. Now, the reason that's important is very simply this. I could not get a publisher to publish the book initially for me. Later is no trouble, but initially I could not. I had to publish the book myself. And in there, I decided to order 25,000 copies. A friend said, if you sell 25,000 copies, you got yourself a bestseller. So I ordered 25,000 copies of the book. Now, let me tell you something about books. The first copy costs you more than the next 24,999. And those 24,999 ain't cheap. I'm talking about a whole bunch of money. Now, I made a financial commitment to buy those books. I also had written in there that I weighed 165 pounds. Now, let me tell you something about human nature. If I tell you one lie and you catch me in it, from here on in, everything I say, you're going to put a question mark after it. If you tell me a lie and I catch you in it, from here on in, everything you say to me, I'm going to put a question mark in it. In my book, I wrote I weighed 165 pounds. I had 25,000 copies of the book. Now, you can imagine what would happen if I had not lost the weight. Now, I got a warehouse full of books, and I weigh 165, and I come waddling out at 202. And your next question would be, I wonder what else he lied to me about. Friends, I made a commitment. There is no question about it. You got to make a commitment. And you got to understand something which is extremely important, and that is that your vocabulary makes a great deal of difference in your success in life. I got to apologize for those people who've heard me do this. But for years, I went around the country, and with a strained expression on my face and pain in my voice, I'd say, you got to pay the price. Sound like a dying calf in a snowstorm. And what a bunch of baloney that was. I'll never forget 9 months of hating jogging and hating joggers. How many of you hate joggers? Can I see your hand, okay? For 9 months, I really hated those joggers. You know, every time I saw one, he's jumping up and down and saying, man, it makes you feel so good. It gives you so much energy. And there I was, hating and hurting every step I was taking and fussing about it, too. And then that day in Portland, Oregon, never forget it, if I live to be 150, Beautiful spring day. Temperature about 78 degrees. It was high noon. I was running on Portland State University campus. Had a seminar at 4 o'clock. This was high noon. And as I was running out there that day, I noticed a lot of the students were laying on blankets. Some were reading, some were studying, some were recording, some were snoozing. And here comes old Ziglar running by. Sweat running down my back, sweat running down my legs. And all of a sudden it hit me that for the first time I was really enjoying running. I was having a ball. And that day I changed my vocabulary. The truth is, folks, you don't pay the price for good health. You enjoy the benefits of good health. You don't pay the price for setting goals. You pay the price for not setting those goals. You enjoy the benefits of reaching those goals. You don't pay the price for a good marriage. You pay the price for a poor one. You enjoy the benefits of the good one. You don't pay the price for good health. You pay the price for poor health. You enjoy the benefits of good health. Yes, your vocabulary really does make a great deal of difference as to whether or not you reach your goals or not. We definitely need to keep it positive, because you see, the mind takes whatever picture you paint in it and goes to work to complete that picture. I want to emphasize that what you get by reaching your goals is not nearly as important as what you become by reaching them. The attitudes, knowledge, and skills and habits developed by people with goals are of infinite value in the tomorrows of their lives. With goals, you can more fully realize your maximum potential, because goals enable you to know, be, do, and have more. Use your mind and talents fully. Have more purpose and direction in life. Make better decisions. Be more organized and effective. Do more for yourself and others. Have greater confidence and self-worth. Feel more fulfilled. Be more enthusiastic and motivated. And yes, accomplish some uncommon projects. Want to reach your goals? You got to know how to train fleas. Now, just as a matter of curiosity, how many of you in this audience do not know how to train fleas? Can I see your hands, please? Boy, it looks like I got to you just in time. And I know you heard the one about the two fleas at the bottom of the hill, and one of them says, well, do we walk or take a dog? Well, anyhow. You train fleas by putting them in a jar, and you put the top on the jar, and those fleas will jump up and they'll hit that top over and 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 over. And you watch them jump for a long period of time, and they'll keep on jumping and hitting and jumping and hitting. And you watch them, and then all of a sudden you'll notice that even though they continue to jump, they will no longer be hitting the top. Literal truth. Then you can take the top off, and they'll jump and jump and jump and jump and jump and jump, but they cannot, I repeat, they cannot jump out. And the reason they cannot jump out is because they've been conditioned to jump just so high. And once they've conditioned themselves to jump just so high, that's all there is. There ain't no more. Man is precisely the same way. He starts out in life to climb the mountain, to write the book, to break the record, to do something with his life. And along the way, he bumps his head, he stubs his toe, and he becomes what I call a SNIOP. Now, a SNIOP, and that is spelled S-N-I-O-P, is a person who is susceptible to the negative influence of other people. Classic example that everybody will instantly recognize is the 4-minute mile. For years and years and years, athletes the world over had tried to run a mile in 4 minutes. But because they were SNIOPs, they could not do it. The coach had taken his watch out and said, man, there ain't no way you can do it in 4 minutes. Maybe 4:02, maybe 4:05, but not 4 minutes. The doctors had put their stethoscope on the athlete's heart and said, a 4-minute mile? You got to be kidding, man. Nobody will ever do that. Your heart will come right out of the body. It is impossible. And nobody could run a 4-minute mile until a fleet trainer named Roger Bannister came along and ran a mile in less than 4 minutes. When Bannister ran the mile in less than 4 minutes, athletes the world over started running miles in less than 4 minutes. Landy of Australia did it less than 6 weeks later. I was in New Zealand last year, and the man over there, Thompson I believe is his name, though please don't hold me to that, had just run his 100th 4-minute or sub-4-minute mile. A 37-year-old man ran a mile in less than 4 minutes. There have been 4 or 5 races where 8 young men all broke the 4-minute barrier in the same race. Now, what am I saying with all this? I'm saying that Roger Bannister got something started. And I'm also going to tell you that Roger Bannister understood more about goal setting than just about anybody you will ever know. He didn't just train superbly and go run a sub-4-minute mile. Yes, he trained extraordinarily hard, but he measured his stride. He timed himself for the 100, the 220, the 440. He had pacers who paced him for the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. He did it as scientifically and as carefully as any goal setter I've ever seen in my life. Yes, Roger Bannister is a flea trainer. What's a flea trainer? A flea trainer is a person who's driven from within. They're not influenced by the SNI-ops and the negative people in life. A flea trainer is an individual who jumps out of the jar. A flea trainer understands that you can get everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Flea trainers don't tell others where to get off. Flea trainers show them how to get on. Flea trainers don't try to see through other people. Flea trainers see other people through. Want to reach your goals, ladies and gentlemen? You absolutely must become a flea trainer. And you've got to build a winning attitude. We could talk 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months about building winning attitudes. Harvard University did an exhaustive study on it. Discovered that 85% of the reason that people get jobs and get ahead in those jobs is because they have the right mental attitude. The Cox Report, involving well over 1,000 corporate executives. These men and women were asked the question, how important do you think your attitude is in accomplishing your objectives of becoming corporate executives? 49% of these men and women said that their attitudes were extremely significant. 46.5% said they were significant. In other words, 95.5% of these more than 1,000 executives said their attitudes were significant or extremely significant. To reach your goals, yes indeed, you absolutely must have the right mental attitude. And ladies and gentlemen, let me say without any hesitation at all, if you're going to reach your goals, you got to get other people involved. You simply cannot reach major objectives entirely on your own. You got to understand that the influence other people have and the help they can give you will play a major role in what you do. When I was a small boy down in Yazoo City, Mississippi, I never shall forget, there was an abandoned section of the railroad track. And as boys will do, we often went down there, and one of our little games was to see how far we could walk on that railroad track without falling off. And we'd take a few steps and we'd fall, and we'd take a few steps and we would fall. Had we only understood that 2 of us could simply have gotten parallel with each other, reached across the rails and held hands, that we could have literally gone indefinitely without falling off. When business, when management and labor understand that they're on the same side, when husbands and wives and children understand that they're on the same side, when employer and employee understand that they both have the same objectives, when they begin to work together, that's when everybody really benefits the most. You look at the Super Bowl teams every year, and by and large, you're going to have the Super Bowl team that number one had major objectives, that was it. And incidentally, did you realize that they spend over 3,000 hours each team preparing for that specific event? Did you realize that the average American spends infinitely more time planning a vacation than they do planning their lives? Did you realize that more people spend more time planning the wedding than they do the marriage? You see, we need, ladies and gentlemen, we need those specific objectives, and we need to work together on these things if we really are going to work at our maximum and the most people benefit the most. You need to work together. As a matter of curiosity, how many of you have ever seen a flock of Canadian geese flying overhead? Can I see your hands? Okay. If you have, you will notice three things about those Canadian geese. Number one, they always fly in a V formation. Number two, if you will notice them, one leg of the V is always longer than the other leg of the V. And number three, if you follow them carefully enough and long enough, you'll notice there's a considerable amount of confusion in the flock. Now, just as a matter of curiosity, how many of you have ever wondered why one leg of the V is always longer than the other one? Can I see your hands, please? Well, let me explain that the longer leg is longer because it has more geese in it. You know, I don't know why, but that silly thing just really grabs me. I can't wait. I can't wait to get to that particular one, okay? Now, the reason there's confusion in the flock is that periodically they change the leadership of the flock of geese. Now, the reason they fly in a V formation is because in wind tunnel tests, they've discovered that the flock of geese can fly 63% further than the individual goose could fly. What they do, the lead goose, in fighting the headwind, creates a partial vacuum off either wing, and those other geese are flying in a partial vacuum. He grows tired very easily or more quickly than the others, and so they replace leadership real often to give the leader a rest. But by working together, they can fly 63% further. In reaching your objectives, yes, indeed, you really do need to work with other people. If you're going to reach your goals, ladies and gentlemen, you got to get in shape. Now, I want to emphasize something here which I believe is enormously important. In order to reach all of our goals, we need to get in shape spiritually, because that is a very definite factor in our life. We have spiritual goals, but we need spiritual help a lot of times to reach all of the other goals. It requires study, it requires prayer, it requires involvement there. We need to get in shape physically, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't care what your objective is. I can share this with you without any reservation. When I got in shape physically, I was able to do a lot more things with my career because the energy level increased rather dramatically. I have far more energy now than I had when I was 25 years old. They tell me, the psychologists do, for example, that when I make a 1-hour presentation, that I burn more raw energy than a laboring man does in a 10-hour day. So when I do 6 and 8 hours a day, or even 3 or 4 hours in a day, or even 1 hour in a day, I have burned some energy. As you can tell, I speak at about 280 words a minute with gust up to about 550. I mean, you know, I burn some energy. I move it on out. Now, you also need to understand that if you're going to reach your goals, you got to become attentive to the details in your life. A lot of little things that many people overlook, and you need to become aware on a daily basis of what you're doing towards those goals. Now, I'm not trying to get you to be as detail-oriented as the executive vice president of our company. I mean, he proofreads the Xerox copies. I don't think, you know, that's what we're talking about. But it is the little things that make the big difference. You call a girl a kitten, for example, and she'll love you. Call her a cat. You see, you got a problem there. You can say she's a vision, you score all kind of points. Call her a saint, you're in bad trouble. It's one thing to tell a young lady that she looks like the first day of spring. It's another thing to tell her she looks like the last day of a long, hard winter. I mean, there is a difference. It's the little things. Fellas, if you look at your wife and say, you know, honey, when I look into your eyes, the wheels of time just stand still. That's beautiful, that's poetry, that's motivating, that's exciting. But can you imagine what would happen if you were to look at her and say, you know, honey, you got a face that'd stop a clock. I mean, It's the little things. If this watch of mine were 4 hours wrong, I wouldn't have any trouble with it. I can tell you instantly if my watch is 4 hours wrong. But if it's 4 minutes wrong, I'm in trouble. For example, tomorrow morning I catch a flight at 8:20. Now, if my watch is 4 minutes wrong and I get there at 8:24, see what the problem is? I made a deal with the airlines that, you know, if I was not there when they got ready to go, that they were just to go ahead without me. And I found out last year that they live up to their end of the agreement. I found out also it's easier to catch those dudes before they leave the ground. All of that to say it's the little things that make a big difference. If you want to reach your goals, ladies and gentlemen, not only must you be detail-oriented, looking after the little things, but you also must literally be able to see the reaching. When I had my physical examination at the Cooper Clinic, preparatory to losing the weight and getting on the exercise program, one of the things I did over there, and this is kind of ugly, but I had not read Ann Landers at the time, and I'll use it as my excuse, although I really knew better. You know, Ann says you're not supposed to steal pages out of other folks' magazines. There was a magazine at Dr. Cooper's office. It was an old magazine now. And there was a picture in it advertising jockey shorts. Now, I don't know if you folks read the jockey short ads or not, but if you don't read the jockey short ads, the next time you see one, you ought to at least look at the picture. You'll find out in a hurry, they don't put jockey shorts on fat boys. I mean, they just don't. At least they don't have a good year. Now, I took that picture of that fella in those jockey shorts and I hung it up in my bathroom and I said, now there's my hero. That's the way I'm going to be. That's the way I am going to look. Well, the next morning at 5:30, the opportunity clock sounded off. Negative people call them alarm clocks. You know, the opportunity, I mean, if you can hear it, that gives you an opportunity to get up and go. You know what I mean? The opportunity clock sounded off. I rolled out of bed, put on my fancy running outfit I just got, and hit the front door and ran a block, literally. Did better the next day, I ran a block and a mailbox. Did better than that the next day, I ran a block and 2 mailboxes. I'll never forget what happened. Then finally one day I ran a half a mile, then 2 miles, then 3, then 4, then 5. But every time I went in the bathroom, ladies and gentlemen, I saw the picture of that guy in the jockey shorts. That became my goal right there. I visualized myself as looking just like that guy right there. I'm going to look like this man in the jockey shorts. The truth of the matter is we really do need to have a clearly defined target. We need to be able to literally see ourselves as reaching that objective. For many, many years before I ever succeeded, quote, on the platform as a speaker, it was my dream to do exactly that. I cannot begin to tell you the tens of thousands of speeches I made in my mind in order to reach that particular goal. I visualized every speech imaginable. And the beautiful thing about imagination, you see, is you can visualize any kind of speech and any kind of response you want. In these speeches which I made in my mind, and boy, do I ever wish we could have recorded just one of them. You talking about speeches. You've heard about speakers having folks rolling in the aisles. I had them rolling up and down the steps. You heard, about standing ovation. My average standing ovation was 11 minutes in my dreams. I mean, listen, I never made a mistake in the speech I had in my mind. The audience sat there with incredible rapture and attention. I mean, as if they could not believe that a mere mortal could utter such incredible words of wisdom. I mean, the beautiful thing about the imagination is, you see, you can make it absolutely just right. You gotta have your dreams. But let me tell you something, folks. Be careful about your dreams. Be very careful. Because you see, when you dream those dreams, when you write them down, when you put a date on it, when you list the obstacles which you have to overcome in order to get there, when you identify the people, the groups, and the organizations you need to work with in order to get there, when you spell out what you've got to know in order to reach your objectives, when you devise that plan of action, that game plan to get there, and when you write it down, what's in it for me, when you do all of those things, ladies and gentlemen, and follow some of these other steps that we're talking about and are still talking about, you're going to be reaching some of those objectives. I can honestly look you in the eye and say that virtually every major objective I've ever set in my life has been reached. And I honestly believe that the rest of them will be reached. When you follow the steps with firm conviction, when you've made your commitment, when you do all the things we're talking about, things are going to happen in your life. If you'll notice, I've not even hinted throughout this entire presentation that it is easy, because it is not. As a matter of fact, I'm absolutely convinced that life is tough. But the point is, you got to be tough on yourself. And when you're tough on yourself, then life is going to be infinitely easier on you. I can tell you it's fun. I can tell you it's exciting. I can tell you it's rewarding. And I can tell you that when you follow all of the steps we're talking about, that all the goals we've been talking about, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the social, the career goals, the financial goals, they all come to pass. You see, the interesting thing is, as we look at our goals, there's no such thing as an individual goal. When I set the goal, for example, of writing that book, only about 1 in 2,600 pages a day, little did I realize that it would have such a bearing on my social goals. You'll be amazed at the people that invite me to a free dinner now since I wrote a book. I mean, it affected my social life. But you know what? It also affected my family life, because I had to do a lot of research to put it together. It improved our relationship. It improved my spiritual life, because again, I had to do some research there. It definitely improved my physical life, because I tied it in. Had a dramatic impact on my career. Had an impact in every phase of my life. Your goals are going to do the same thing. There's no such thing as an isolated goal. They're all tied in to so many of your other goals. In order to reach your goals, we need to be able to visualize all of them. Many years ago, in the days of the sailing ship, there was a young sailor who was out at sea for the first time. And he was ordered aloft to trim the sails because a squall was coming up. And as he started to climb up, he made the mistake of looking down. And the roll of the ship and the turbulence of the sea combined to cause him to become nauseated, and he started to lose his balance and fall. An older sailor underneath shouted up at the young man, "Look up, son, look up!" And the young sailor looked up and immediately regained his balance. You see, the message is very clear. When the outlook isn't good, try the uplook. It's always good. And when things don't look good, look to make absolutely certain that you're not facing in the wrong direction. As Helen Keller so eloquently put it, when you're looking at the sun, you won't see the shadows. And when you're looking towards your objectives, which you've set, you won't be seeing so many of the obstacles as you reach towards those goals. Many years ago, as some of you know, the great Houdini was in his heyday. Some people said that Houdini was the greatest magician who ever lived. He was also the master locksmith. He made the boast that he could get out of any jail cell in the world. If you'd let him walk in that jail cell with his street clothes on, he would be out in less than an hour. A small town in the British Isles built a new jail. They were tremendously proud of it. They didn't believe Houdini or anybody else could get out of their jail, and so they challenged him to come give it a try. There's a lot of publicity, a lot of money involved. Houdini liked both of those things, so he accepted the challenge. There was a lot of the publicity going in. The drums were beating, the bugles were blaring, and Houdini strode triumphantly into the jail cell. They closed the door behind him. Houdini took his coat off, and secreted in his belt was a 10-inch piece of steel. Very tough, very flexible, very durable. And he went to work on the lock. At the end of 30 minutes, the confident, even arrogant expression on Houdini's face had disappeared. At the end of an hour, he was absolutely bathed in perspiration. At the end of 2 hours, he actually collapsed and fell against the door, which opened because it had never been locked anywhere except in Houdini's own mind, which meant very simply that it was locked more securely than if every locksmith in Britain had put their best locks on the door. I got to tell you, folks, there are a lot of people who can stop you temporarily. But I'm also going to look you right in the eye and tell you that you are the only one who can stop you on a permanent basis. And I've got an idea as you digest what we've been covering in this hour together, that you're not going to let anybody else stop you on reaching those worthwhile goals, and you're certainly not going to stop yourself. But let me say this, what you get by reaching your goals is not nearly as important as what you will become by reaching the goal that many people said you would not make when you started out. I close with this. Buy these ideas, follow these suggestions, adopt these procedures as your very own. Follow them right through to completion, and I'll definitely see you. And yes, I really do mean you at the top.